Now that's real. Welcome back to Real Faith Conversations, and in this show, we try to talk about life, culture, and faith in the most genuine way possible. My name is Ryan Morris, and I am here with Caitlin West, a parishioner at St. Peter, who is going to be riding her bike in California to raise money for the Arthritis Foundation. Today, she's going to be talking about her journey with this disease and why she is so passionate about the cause. Welcome, Caitlin, to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm actually not a parishioner yet.
That's right. That's right.
I'm working on it.
You're just new.
I'm just new. We moved to the area, my boyfriend and I, about a year and a half ago, and we discovered St. Peter's, and it's been such a blessing. It's been so great just coming here and being welcomed by the community, praying the rosary, going to Tuesday night prayer. So we love it.
Nice. Yeah, so I'll have to register you after the show.
Yes, we can knock it
so
out.
You become an official parishioner.
That would be great.
Yeah, this is awesome. Well, the way this came about, you emailed me about this awesome initiative you're going to undertake in California, this biking for the Arthritis Foundation.
Correct. So the Arthritis Foundation every September, October puts on what they call the California Coast Classic.
Wow, sounds intimidating.
It is. And I might have overcommitted, but it's for a good reason. So essentially a whole bunch of bikers, like 300 or so, don't quote me on that number, bike from San Francisco along the Pacific Coast Highway to LA.
Wow.
Raising money and awareness for those suffering from arthritis. For me personally, I've been battling with psoriatic arthritis for over a decade, and I'm actually a Connect group leader with the Arthritis Foundation. So I came to figure out about the ride through our Pathways conference that we had in 2023. And I recently have been challenging myself from a flare-up perspective to say, okay, see if you can do an aqua fit or an aqua bike, which is biking 10 miles and swimming 0.5. So these half triathlon things.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm on this fitness journey, right? And the whole purpose of it is to say arthritis isn't going to hold me back, but also to be a motivator for other people who have flare-ups. And a flare-up could be stiffness of hands, not being able to really move your feet or your knees or your joints. So biking 525 miles might be a bit aggressive, but I think, just going out there every day and knowing that I have support and love around me, as well as faith guiding me through it, even if I don't do all 525, just showing people with arthritis that they can also do these activities in their own shape and form is really what I'm passionate about and why we're talking today. So
That's awesome. That's good. I mean, it's intimidating, but it's important, and it sounds fun too. So I'm glad you're doing it.
I think it'll be great. I mean, the coast of California, how could you not?
Yeah, the views alone, wow.
Just being there, breeze, hopefully there's no rain.
Yeah, right. I was actually just caught in the rain the other day biking. That storm that came through.
Yes.
I was actually biking just a short 5 miles, just trying to beat the storm.
Yes.
And literally the last quarter of my ride was in the rain.
Oh, you're so brave. I haven't mastered really biking in the rain yet because I'm afraid of slipping, but I have to get through that all.
It definitely affects your brakes.
Yes.
So you have to keep that in mind.
Probably a good call.
Yeah. So, wow. I mean, whenever I think of arthritis, I think of someone maybe that just recently retired. Maybe they were typing all their life and they happen to get it in their hands, but you are far from retirement age and you are dealing with this. So for those who don't know much about it, what's the different types of arthritis, and how does it affect younger people as well?
Yeah, it's actually a really heartbreaking disease in a lot of different ways. So there's JRA, which is juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So it's essentially rheumatoid arthritis, but in babies and toddlers and kids as they grow up, which normally progresses into rheumatoid arthritis. That's one of the most debilitating, honestly, forms of arthritis. There's osteoarthritis, which is, your knees, more of what I would say, not traditional, but maybe a little bit more common as you get older and you have wear and tear on your body. Joints and ligaments just don't fuse the same way anymore. Psoriatic arthritis, like the one that I have, is actually psoriasis that progresses into the joints and the the digestive tract.
Wow.
So all of arthritis is an autoimmune disease. Normally it's hereditary. In my case, it wasn't. But it's just a matter of your environment and what you have around you. And then there's just other forms of arthritis that are up and coming and just growing that I'm not even privy to, but it's like as you continue to dive deeper or lean in to what arthritis really means, it means something different for everyone.
Yeah.
My journey with psoriatic arthritis will not be the same as someone older or younger than me. I was diagnosed at 25, 34 now, going to be 35. So I was diagnosed really young, and I was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of psoriatic arthritis. I couldn't move. I had a hard time getting out of bed, couldn't drive, couldn't move my hands, couldn't grip cups, couldn't feed myself because my body just wasn't working. And then my skin completely flared all over my face, over my shoulders, everything.
Oh, wow.
And my hands. So yes, if you saw me at 25 when I was diagnosed, you would be like, okay, something is wrong. But now I don't have the same skin issues, but I have everything else going on. It's almost this invisible disease that needs to be talked about more. Because arthritis in whatever form, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah.
And people may not be in pain, or you don't know what they're doing to cope with the pain. And that's the whole mission of the Arthritis Foundation, is to advocate, to educate, and to build that community up so that people are aware.
Yeah.
And they learn more.
For sure. Like, looking at you right now, I could never tell that you have arthritis. Like, it's like you said, it's an invisible disease that people don't really see unless you have all the skin flare-ups and all that. But honestly, if you don't have that, but you feel the pain, people won't know. It's crazy.
People won't know. And I mean, I get infusions. So I get infusions, which is like IVX, administered drug, every 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how I'm feeling. Some people are on methotrexate, which is a form of chemo.
Wow.
There's steroid injections, there's oral medications. I mean, I won't do methotrexate because I pay too much money for my naturally blonde hair. So I want to be like able, the veinness. And as a young female, that was a huge motivator for me getting diagnosed. I was okay if people saw that I was struggling physically, but I didn't want them to see what it was doing to my skin, or maybe like my hair loss. Because even with infusions, you do have hair loss. You do just have like inflammation in general. You're just tired, right? And I was okay. People thought I was tired. I was not okay. People thought I was, suffering in any way or shape or form, which is so different than how I am now. I lean into it now.
Yeah.
I've gone back and forth in my faith throughout this journey, as it's gotten really tough and really easy, but also in both senses, right? Like you go through a grieving process when you get diagnosed with something that impacts your life, from your ability to walk, your ability sometimes to even have energy, the chronic fatigue, and you start questioning why all of the time. And it's a mindset, it's a journey. And the comments about, oh, you're so young, or you're fine, just drink more milk. And I was like, I wish it was that easy to fix it with drinking more milk. I mean, I drank a ton of milk as a kid. I drank like 4 gallons of milk a week. We were a milk household. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned your faith journey. I mean, I've seen it go both ways, right? Sometimes suffering can bring people closer to Christ, and sometimes suffering can, cause someone to say, you know what, I'm walking away.
Yeah.
For you, how has that been?
So life has definitely been a journey for myself and my family. Like, I had a mother who lost her battle to cancer, 10 years ago. So right around when I was diagnosed.
So like 2013 area?
Yeah, 2013. Yeah, time just goes by so fast. I can't believe it's like a decade since then. But, I was raised in an Irish Catholic home. My mom prayed the rosary. We went to Catholic school. We went to church 2 to 3 times a day. Oh, not, I mean, a week. Sorry, not a day.
Yeah. Jumping around in different parishes.
Just, crawling around, but no. And it, I will say it was almost like a chore than it was a love, right? So then in that sense, it really kind of put a wedge, but I always reverted back to my faith in tough times. So like whenever we were having a hard bout with my mom, I was always praying the rosary or I was always writing in prayer. So it's interesting because even though up to that point, I said that part of that leg, I was not really in my faith. I was doing things because they were of pattern to me.
Yeah.
Like
a
always
habit.
a habit.
Yeah.
And my day felt off if I didn't pray the rosary. And to this day, like I have a rosary in my purse right now. I always like take it out and I pray. So, and then when she passed away, leaned into my faith more. And then when I felt like I was kind of getting that sense of comfort, I leaned back and I was like, okay, I think I'm okay. And then we had, my dad had open heart surgery or he had stents put in. And then we had a brother who battled with alcoholism. And it's like, you go through these waves of life. But the one constant thing for me was just either going to a chapel and sitting there and praying or just sitting and meditating and praying the rosary. Wow. So reflecting back on all of that, even through like my diagnosis, it's interesting how that is the one steady state. And that was, I believe, God's way of keeping me connected in a way that wasn't overbearing and in a way that allowed me to kind of have my own graces, but still ultimately end up with where I am today, which is definitely, again, like leaning back in, but I'm not having any real struggles, right? So I'm doing it because it feels right. It feels comforting. Yeah. It's a good way for me to kind of do a cleansing and like it's a healing process. Yeah. So, and just, it builds community in a different form. And as I was going through all of those stages of life, I tried to fit in a lot of different groups because naturally I've always been very driven, always been an all or nothing type of person. And you realize through prayer that all you really need is just like one powerful connection to get you through. Praying to God is one way of doing that. And then he just allows you to have the right people in your life. Yeah. And that time. And it's like, I even think about this conversation. This is all because I reached out. I was like, oh, well, maybe, the church would be interested. Yeah. And now here we are talking about this whole journey. And it's just like a magical course to me. Wow. So I know that's like a long-winded way to say it, but
it was good. Praise God for that, right?
Yeah.
And right now I'm in a missionary discipleship course on like prayer and helping others. Well, one, helping myself form the habits of a missionary disciple, but then also kind of going out and accompanying others, how to accompany others on that journey. And one of the huge aspects of it is forming the habit of prayer. And being open to a constant conversion in it. Yep. Right. And so when I hear you say pray the rosary and, sit in the chapel or pray to God about these things in the midst of, you've been through so much, it seems like. Through your mom, your dad, yourself, your brother, your family has been through so much. Yet for you, a constant habit has been prayer, which is fascinating. Right. It's fascinating that you kind of turn to that because a lot of times I think it can go the other way where you're like, you know what, all this stuff, or this is a mess. Why do I need prayer, right? Why do I need God? This is just a mess. Is there anything in particular that drew you closer to prayer or wanted you to kind of continue down that route? Or is there anything in particular that happens during prayer that really touches you, that brings you out of that slump?
It's interesting because I always know I'm in this like depletion when I'm very emotional, right? Like I'll start crying because I saw an SPCA commercial and I'm like, okay, I need to get it like what I call like a God gear tune up. So when I'm praying or when I just go to the chapel, sometimes it's just like, how do I get comfort, right? How do I get out and get comfort? And I'll just go and I'll find when we lived in Philadelphia, I would go to St. Patrick's Cathedral all the time and just like sit there. And sometimes I would people watch, but just sitting there
Yeah.
and just kind of being in my own thoughts for whether it would be like an hour or maybe it would be 15 minutes or maybe it was even 5 minutes. It just kind of got me recentered. And I would be like, okay. And I would say, and I would make myself say, what is the one thing I'm grateful for?
Mhm.
Whether it be just getting myself to church or is it helping someone and smiling. So it's interesting because I say it's prayer, but it's really just the diligence of when you don't want to do it, just going somewhere where
Wow.
you get the comfort.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're angry, right? Sometimes I'm there and
yeah.
I'm like, no, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't know why this is my path, but this is bananas. This is for the birds. But then other times it's just like, all right, I get it now. I'm ready. Like, let's just keep going on this journey.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, right? Like when unless you're really fortunate to have this calling and this blessing as you're growing up. I'm not saying that we weren't, but for me personally, it's like I didn't want to have to be forced into anything. And I don't think religion or faith, you should feel forced into it.
Yeah.
It should feel like home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was home. And when I didn't want to go, I was like, crap, like, but I know this will make me feel better. I know I will get the comfort. And I would just sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everywhere I go, I always look for a chapel.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of the things, so I work with a lot of teens here in the parish, and one of the things teens are uncomfortable with is sitting in silence. On Divine Mercy Sunday, we took the teens into the shrine room over here. One, they have confession opportunities, but also the Blessed Sacrament was exposed on the altar, and I walked them through adoration, right? And how to do it, how to contemplate, it's okay to be mad at God, right? Just voice that, right? I walked them all through that. We read some scripture, and then we had a discussion back in the couch room afterwards. Like, how was this experience? And the number one thing that they said was it felt awkward just being in silence, you know? Some others, like, we needed to be fidgety. We needed to do something. And so as human beings, sometimes we try to fill that void with something, but actually sometimes, like you hit it there, sometimes the best thing is just sit there with God and maybe say nothing, right? Just say nothing. I think you mentioned like, oh, sometimes I would just sit there and people watch. That in itself is a form of prayer. Sitting there in silence is a form of prayer. You don't always have to be chanting or reciting prayers when you're sitting in front of the Lord, which is a huge lesson, right? Because sometimes we're like, oh, all right, the Blessed Sacrament is exposed. We have to be saying something, I guess. But no, actually, you can just sit there and listen, right?
Totally. And you raise a very valid point. I think as humans, we want to be productive.
Yeah.
We want to be doing something. And the thought of just being quiet and not doing anything, people, and I've been guilty of this. What should I be doing? What's my to-do list? Like, what calls will I have when I go check my phone? Like, I work in finance, which is a stressful thing. And now I'm an entrepreneur. So I'm like, everyone is like calling me, but I'm like, you know what? It can wait. It will be there. What can't wait is this, because if I'm off, then nothing else works.
Yeah.
The one thing I also remember doing, and I actually did this through therapy, because, with all the things that we went through and we kind of highlighted, therapy is such a blessing too, just to have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
And I remember my therapist was like, why don't you just try writing? Just journal, right? Just journal. If you don't have anything, doodle. And I still keep them. Like they're prayer journals, but sometimes they're prayer doodles. So like if I'm anxious and I need to be doing something, I'll always have like a notebook or a pen with me, and I'll just doodle. I'll date it, and sometimes I'll add like what church or chapel I'm in, because in that way it's kind of like a prayer memory book, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to go back to those doodles like 10, 15 years ago and to see how much I loved American Girl dolls, which was almost shameful, and Beanie Babies. Even at an age where I should not have.
Those Beanie Babies,
Beanie Babies, like those. Oh, the collectors? Oh, I remember my brother ripped all the tags off one time. That's a whole other podcast.
Oh
Because
no, you don't rip those tags off.
no,
No.
I was like, those are collectors. Those are like my way in. Let me tell you, I had Princess Diana Beanie Baby. It was the
Oh
collector
my
of
gosh.
the collector. It was on her little case, and I come back from like Girl Scouts or something, and my little brother, who was like the sweetest little thing, ripped off all of the tags. He goes, I unpackaged them for you. And I was like, no.
See, we think we're doing you a favor.
Like, why? Had such a fit.
Wow.
It's such a fit about Beanie Babies. But anyways,
Yeah, those little side passions, right?
I was like, oh my gosh. It's, we laugh about Beanie Babies, but to get very, like philosophical, I don't even know what the word is.
Philosophical.
Thank you. I was like, what's the word? I'm getting tongue tied. If we were to get as excited about Beanie Babies as we were to get about prayer, or even
Oh,
half
wow.
as excited,
Yeah.
right? I was listening to this other podcast, and they said, well, what if you got as excited about prayer and God as you did about dinner and eating? I was
Yeah.
like, oh, like I'm always like, what's going on? Like, and it's like, how do you create that?
Mhm.
And to bring it back to like autoimmune diseases, it's tough for people.
Yeah.
It's tough for people to get that. It's tough for people to feel that want and that passion when sometimes all they want is relief. And
Yeah.
how like getting faith to be your relief is one way that feeds the soul, but also it's another way just to kind of let go and let God take over, and stop blaming, him for your disease, when really it's sometimes it's just science, and sometimes it's just the way your body was made that
Yeah.
can't handle certain things,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you briefly mentioned your career in finance, and that's high stress.
Oh yeah.
I know off camera we were talking about, the possibility that that kind of contributed to some of this stuff. Can you walk us down briefly about, your career path and how that
Yeah.
is, like how you live in that environment?
So I started off being like, if we go all the way back, like a fashion merchandising major at Philadelphia University, now Thomas Jefferson,
Mhm.
which will always be Phil U to me, and an accounting major. And I've always loved complementing like retail with numbers to understand how businesses could just be more profitable. I love numbers. Like I'm a geek to this. Like I
Yeah.
just love to dig into and to learn business models. So I spent 5 years being on like what I call like the merchandise planning side, is like sales and inventory planning for companies like such as like BCBG, Swimwear, Charming Charlie's. And then the other part of that, in some small startups, I was helping companies in their form of transformation. And what transformation looks like is either emerging or going through bankruptcy,
Mhm.
executive transitions, financial planning for the future. So like traditional like long range planning. And
Yeah.
I was the one that would always be partnered or tethered to the CFO and be the go-to.
Mhm.
So in that sense, it's difficult because people see me and they're like, oh, you look so young. Like, what do you know?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
again, it's going back, oh, you look so young. Like, how could you have arthritis?
Yeah.
And it was a battle. Like, it was probably at some points 18-hour days.
Wow.
I would joke I had hours off, not days off.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, when you don't get off of work until 9 or 10 o'clock at night, because this was before pandemic where we were all in the office, and I was moving every 6 months to a year, mind you, right? So
Wow.
like I was moving from Philly, Cali, all along the coast, Texas, New York, back to Texas, like for 10 years,
Yeah.
like all over. But when you move like that, and when you work as long, and going to eat dinner at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, going to get a couple of drinks with friends, like you just don't have time to focus on yourself, and all you do is
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Like all you do is work.
Yeah.
And then it's not healthy.
Mhm.
So it's like a rinse and repeat, and you're just ebbing and flowing, and then you're doing it on the weekends too because there's not enough time during the week.
Yeah.
So it becomes sometimes 70 to 80, 90-hour work week depending on the deliverable. But then you crash, right? So like when I was diagnosed, I was in a high stress role at the time. I was helping a company go through bankruptcy or transformation. I was in a really toxic relationship too. And I was getting stress from all sides. And it was my body's way of saying, you need a reboot, you need a reset.
Yeah.
And it was tough because I physically could not hold my phone and I physically could not move my fingers too tight. So I was forced to not do anything.
Wow.
And
Sometimes we just get those wake up calls. It's like, man, I just can't do anything more.
yeah.
But your mind says, no, go, go, go.
Mine is saying go, go, go. It's like, what will people think if I can't, show up for work?
Yeah.
And it's, it's retail, right? And not to diminish it, but I had my mentor say, she goes, you're not curing cancer. You're not saving lives. Like jeans will be jeans. Shirts will be shirts. Everything will be there. Everything will be okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that perspective about you can only control what you control and your health needs to be number one.
Yeah.
And then if you're not healthy and if you're not right in like the mindset, you're not going to be able to perform your job, in the right way. And it still takes me time to understand that now, because now I moved into being my own boss, moving into being an entrepreneur, also helping the arthritis community in a different way. And I probably have the same amount of work or stress, but it doesn't feel like that because the balance is there, right? Yeah. Able to spend time for prayer and meditation, able to focus on my health more. And it's like, okay, if I'm working at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I'm working on something that really fuels my fire. And it just hits completely differently.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I want to be healthier so I could show up better. Before it was like, oh, like, let me have a glass of wine or two, like big glasses just to get me through this next like phase of the project. That's not healthy either. Right. And it's definitely been also a journey that's ebbed and flowed with the different situations in my life.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Yeah. This is a lot of good stuff, I think, for people who are in the grind right now.
Yeah.
And need to hear that. Need to hear like, hey, it's okay to slow down and it's okay to do a check, right? A spiritual check, but a health check sometimes. Because if we're just in the grind for so long, it'll really affect your health. And who knows? I mean, it could lead to this arthritis condition, right? Or other things. Mental health is a huge thing now as well. Yep. So there's a lot of reasons to slow down. One, to prioritize God as well. I mean, when you slow down, you start to gain a new perspective on, hey, where could I actually fit maybe 5 to 15 minutes of prayer in my day and not just answer those 5 extra emails, Yeah. So yeah, it's really important. And part of this biking that you're going to be doing, you're raising money for this, right? So we'll have, I think you have a link, right? So we'll have the link in the description of this podcast, whatever platform people are viewing it or listening to it on, we'll have it in there. And then should we have contact info or is it just through the link? Can they do that?
Through the link, but I'm happy to also give you my contact info. I have, my email and my cell phone that we could put there. And I think my biggest energizing passion with biking and raising awareness is also helping people throughout their own pain journey. So please use the information if you feel inspired to reach out or you just need someone that just maybe kind of gets what you're going through. I think there's power in just knowing you're not alone.
Great.
Faith journey or arthritis journey, I'm happy to also do that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being willing to come onto the podcast. It's always great to have a new guest and especially one that kind of came out of the blue. It just sparked from an email. So thank you so much for being willing to share your story. I would love to have you on again. When is your biking journey start? When does that start?
So it starts September 30th through October 7th. So we have some time
Yeah.
to raise the funds. But I mean, honestly, thank you so much. This has just been such a blessing. I was nervous to do this, so I'm happy this all worked out.
Yeah, honestly, you're a natural on the podcast.
Oh,
So
thank
I would
you.
love to have you on again at some point, maybe even after after the biking, to
Yeah.
see how it went and, check in on that. But also just to maybe, you mentioned that you come on Tuesday nights sometimes and things like that. Maybe we can talk more about that stuff. But
I would love that.
cool. Well, thanks again. If anyone else out there listening or watching us wants to come onto the podcast, just email media@stpeterchurch.net. That is media@stpeterchurch.net, just like you did, right? You emailed us. And you can come onto the podcast and share your journey, share your experience, whatever it is. But this show, we just try to be real, right? And just have genuine conversations. But all right, we'll see you next time. Thanks again. Bye.